You know, when we think of the story of Abraham, we usually think of a family tree, of ancestry. But what if that's not the main point at all? Today, we're going to dig into how a simple name change actually reveals this profound choice we all have to make. A choice between a life defined by the physical world around us and one defined by a spiritual promise. Okay, so here's the puzzle at the very heart of this. You have one man, but he's got two names, Abram and then Abraham. Now, on the surface, that seems like a tiny change, right? But what if it represents a total reinvention of who he was? Let's figure out what really happened there. To really get this transformation, we have to start with the names themselves, because each one represents a completely different identity. And that difference, well, it sets the stage for everything that comes next.
So let's just look at the meaning here. The name Abram means great father. It's a title that's all about the physical world, about a direct physical bloodline. But when his name changes to Abraham, it suddenly means father of many nations. Now that is a huge shift. We're not talking about DNA anymore. We're talking about a spiritual family, one that's united by a shared faith.
And this whole idea of two different identities, it's not unique to Abraham's story. It's actually a universal concept. The source material breaks it down into what it calls the flesh, that's our outer person, our physical body, and the spirit, our inner spiritual self. The thing is, we all have both. The real question is, which one's in the driver's seat? And this choice has some pretty massive consequences. If we only live by the flesh, focusing on our physical lives, the story says that's just temporary. It all eventually returns to dust. But if we live with faith in something bigger, in that divine promise, it leads to a kind of rebirth, a whole new way of being that isn't limited by our physical bodies at all. So this idea of flesh versus spirit isn't just a concept in a book. It becomes a real-life, honest-to-goodness family drama for Abraham, and it all centers around his two sons. At the center of all this, you've got two women. First, there's Hagar. Physically, she's young, she's healthy, she's perfectly able to have a child, but spiritually, she's not really connected to that divine promise. Then you've got Sarah, Abraham's wife. Physically, it's impossible. She's old, way past childbearing age, but spiritually, her faith is unshakable. This really sets up a classic conflict between what's physically possible and what's spiritually promised.
So faced with this problem he can't solve, Sarah's age, Abram decides to take matters into his own hands. He relies on his own human effort, and the result is a son, Ishmael. But then everything changes. God makes this impossible promise to the man now known as Abram that he and his elderly wife Sarah will have a son. And through their faith in that promise, Isaac is born.
So now we have these two sons, and each one represents a completely different path in life. Ishmael, born from human planning, he represents the son of the flesh. But Isaac, born from a totally impossible situation through pure faith, he is the son of the promise. He's literally living proof that a spiritual reality can overcome physical limitations. Okay, so if there are two kinds of sons, what does it actually mean to be a true heir? I mean, you think it's all about bloodlines, right? But as we're about to see, this story suggests something completely different.
This quote right here gets to the absolute heart of it. True spiritual identity isn't something you inherit like your last name. It's not about your family tree. It's about a choice, the choice to accept a spiritual truth. And according to this view, that's what makes someone a true heir.
So why does faith matter more than genetics? Well, the logic here is that if God is spirit, then just having a purely physical connection, it's not enough. The source gives a perfect example. Think of all the religious leaders in Jesus' time. They had the perfect ancestry, the perfect pedigree, but they only understood their scriptures on a surface level. They completely missed the deeper spiritual meaning. By contrast, his followers, they were the ones who got it spiritually no matter what their background was. It shows that true belonging is all about spiritual understanding. Okay, so this is a really fascinating story from history, but what does it actually mean for us today? Well, the source lays out a path for how pretty much anyone can become a child of the promise. So the source outlines this 4-step spiritual path. First, it says to always remember that the divine is spiritual, not physical. Second, it's about approaching God with sincerity and truth, not just going through the motions of rituals. Third, you have to truly receive and accept the word of truth in the Spirit, not just read the words on a page. And finally, you have to obey it. Live your life in a way that actually reflects that spiritual truth.
And by following this path, the whole idea is that you can move from a life that's just defined by the physical world to becoming one of these children of the promise.
someone whose entire identity is rooted in a living, spiritual faith. So, as we wrap this up, this ancient story leaves us with a very modern, very personal question. It asks each of us to look at our own lives and decide, which path are we actually on? Are we living by the flesh, focused only on our own efforts and what we can see and touch? Or are we living with faith in a promise that goes way beyond the physical world?